The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, Lord.
My mind and in my lips and in my heart. Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea. Such crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat there, while the whole crowd stood on the beach. He told them many things in parables. Listen, a sower went out to sow. As he sowed, some seeds fell on the path, and the birds came and ate them up. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and they sprang up quickly, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Now other seeds fell on good soil and brought forth grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. Let anyone with ears listen. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I think you all would agree with the fact that we have become an immediate gratification society. We want what we want when we want it. Fast food. Overnight FedEx delivery. Instant information via Google. I don't know, the next time you Google something, take a moment and look up at the left and see how many returns you got on your search in a millisecond. Typically millions of returns, almost instantaneously. Instant gratification. In contrast, last weekend, July 4th weekend, I tend to find that on that weekend, I go and sit in my peace place, which is my garden in my backyard, and then on the midsummer holiday of July 4th, I always become aware of what's around me and how it got to be there with much preparation, much time, many things done to bring them to the height, to a great degree, of the summer season. Rich green, blue, and ryegrass. I've spent many hours establishing that lawn. Healthy, full lilac, privet, and honeysuckle shrubs, hedges and bushes, perennial flowers like hosta, lilies, peonies, and hibiscus, which are not perennials here, so I bring them in and take them out, and there's a process to do that well. It dawned on me that what I was appreciating of what surrounded me began perhaps weeks, many things months, and others even years prior. For example, every fall I patch and overseed the lawn, knowing I'm not going to see immediate result. I transplant a lot because our shade pattern in our yard changes. We have big maple and mulberry trees, and they grow very fast. So some things that grew well here this year, by the end of the summer, they're now sun plants that are now in shade, so I move them. I've always planted a few new bulbs, daffodils and tulips. I love the anticipation of waiting for them in the spring. And I trim the deadwood out of the shrubs, out of the hedges, knowing that by doing that, as in another parable about trimming, we have a fuller yield the next year. The bottom line is, in contrast to immediate gratification society, gardening is a lesson in patience. It's also countercultural, because there aren't many things we take the patience to deal with and do. My props. This is a vest that I was given several months ago, and on the front of it, I wore it today because of the event I went to. I think it's on here. It says CERT, C-E-R-T. and that is to identify me as part of the Catholic Emergency Response Team. And if you remember 3 years ago when there was the terrible violence in Sherman Park, we found out at the Archdiocese that the police and the mayor felt that when something happened, they saw ministers from every other denomination, but there were no Catholics. Very few, anyway. And yet we are the largest denomination by far in the Archdiocese. So we formed a Catholic Emergency Response Team to go in and to build relationships and to pray and to try and bring about peace in a volatile situation. So today, I see Jean Gatton is here somewhere. Jean, where are you? Jean was with me, so she already knows where this is going. Today, my wife and daughter and numerous priests, deacons, Milwaukee police weren't there to protect us. They were actually, but there were many of them with us in the march. And hundreds of parishioners. Jean Gatton from here, I saw several from St. James as well. Well, you know what we went to do? We went to do some gardening. We went to plant some seeds. The seeds we planted were not in the ground, but they were in the human hearts. These are the signs we carried. I'll hold them up for those who aren't in front of the altar so you can see them. You're probably going to recognize both. This is from Pope Paul VI, and he said in 1972, if you want peace, work for justice. This is another sign that comes from a statement from the United States Catholic Conference of Bishops in 1979 that they recently repeated. Straight and to the point. Racism is a sin. So what we went to do today was to support the Black Catholic March for Social Justice. It was sponsored by the Archdiocese of Milwaukee and the Black Catholic Conference. And it was a magnificent example of how you can make a powerful public statement peacefully but profoundly. Let me tell you what the Black Catholic March for Racial Justice was held to do. To publicly support and stand in solidarity with African Americans and members of the black community who suffer racial injustice. To denounce the sin of racism and racial injustice. To commemorate the commitment of the Catholic Church in Milwaukee to support African Americans and the black communities through historic ministerial efforts. Hard as it is to accept for an immediate gratification country, it's taken us decades, in fact centuries, to get to this place of racial injustice. Yes, we've made progress. Yes, we no longer allow slavery. Yes, we no longer allow legal segregation. The issue is, like the story of the thorns, segregation is deep-rooted in our structures, and we don't even realize it. I'm a white, older male, and I will admit to you that I don't understand the heart and soul of the black man and black woman. And so when I live in Menomonee Falls and to a great degree am removed from immersion into a wonderful community, I cannot understand what they have gone through in pain and suffering. Emotional, physical, you've seen some of it play out on the news. So what I would ask you to join me in doing today is to plant seeds. To plant seeds so that we might take this statement, if you want peace and work for justice, we might restate it by saying, if you want an end to racism and sin, work for justice. What did we hear in the first reading today from Isaiah? I think it sums up beautifully this notion of the gardening metaphor and the power of God in the mixture of all of this, and the understanding that it took us decades and centuries to get where we are. Again, difficult for us to accept. It's probably going to take us decades, at least, generations, before we really get this right. We're going to have to be patient. We're going to have to be like what I do in my garden. Every year, we're going to have to replant some seeds. We're going to have to pull up some weeds. We're going to have to continue to nurture what we want to grow. What does God tell us through the prophet Isaiah today? Thus, says the Lord, just as from the heavens the rain and snow come down and do not return there till they have watered the earth, making it fertile and fruitful, giving seed to the one who sows and bread to the one who eats, so shall my word that goes forth from my mouth. My word shall not return to me void, but shall do my will, achieving the end for which it is sent. Sisters and brothers, racism is sin. It needs to be uprooted. If you want an end to racism, work for justice. Will you join me in planting some seeds today, knowing you're not going to see results today? But today, you can pray. But tomorrow, this coming week, the next opportunity perhaps to join me and Jean and others who will go and immerse ourselves in a community and culture that is minority and that is not given just due. Let's consider looking for that opportunity to plant that seed, so that probably not in any of our lifetimes, but the time will come when, in fact, Christ's great commandment will be fulfilled. To love God, to love our neighbor, every single one of them.